government channels changed from channel 18 to 13.3. So that's heads up for people that might be watching. And secondly, Mr. Kosher is not here today. He's ill, so that's why I'm sitting here. First item is the presentation Energize New York has been canceled. Second item is the Finance Committee, which I'll call to order. The first item is the approval of the ASME contract. So would that be...
Again, there's an outline of the changes included in your packet. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions on it.
Ms. Carrazzo?
I'd just like some clarification on number 9, and I don't know if you can do that in open session. It needs to be in executive session, but I just wondered what the details were on that.
I don't think we have to go to executive session. It was the day where somebody had left work early, used some sick time, and then came back at the end of the day, was paid overtime. So it's a question of the accounting using sick time and whether or not they were eligible for overtime coming back in at the end of the day.
And
if I explained that.
no, yeah, but sick time doesn't time accrue, right, to your full work week. So is this, it says to restore a lost date?
This is how the accounting was done for the time was taken off of sick time, personal time, unpaid leave. And part of this deal would resolve that. So the issue's been resolved again to the satisfaction of both parties.
Okay.
Any other questions? Get a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There's no further business. A motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Next is government operations.
I'll call to order government operations, and we have an award bid, accept bid award contract to City Hall basement piping removal for Mr. Wallace.
He's not here, he's on vacation. This is a contract that was awarded, really a follow-up to the cleanup that occurred last year when we had the flooding in the basement. It's an old building that has both electrical, gas pipes, other pipes. One time served a purpose when the building was undergone upgrades or modernization. The old piping was left in place. What this contract is to remove that old piping, just clear it out. I say piping, it's piping and conduit. Sometimes when we have people come in today, it takes them a while to figure out what's live and what isn't. So this will make it cleaner, neater, and more functional as we go forward. And this is one that's within the budget. Bids came in as expected.
Questions?
Can we just let Heckers go down there and get them?
Most of it's not copper.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anything else to come before government operations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Most of those don't take a minute.
Call to order Health and Rec, and we have one item on the agenda, Steinmetz Playground Equipment Grant Funding, assigned to law.
Hello. Oh, okay. Thanks. So as part of the grant that the city received for the improvements to Steinmetz Park Playground, there are many, many requirements, and one of these requirements is to adopt a resolution basically authorizing the mayor to sign any legal documents that are needed. They gave us very specific language. I have copies of it if you'd like to see it, but really that's basically it.
Questions? Please.
I'll move it.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Call to order public safety, and the first item is establishing fingerprinting and background checks for prospective municipal employees, and that is assigned to law.
Yeah,
Can
this
you
is an
update
issue-
us, please?
This is an issue we started to tackle last year. The council last year passed a resolution authorizing the city to do these kinds of checks. Next step in that process is we need to negotiate with the state and get an agreement in place to do those checks in their database. The state did not think that the authorization that the council passed was enough as a resolution, and we tried to convince them otherwise because we thought it was, but they would like to see a local law. So this is the call for a public hearing, passing a local law, doing that same stuff that we laid out last year.
Questions? Come in.
Well, I just have one question.
Go ahead.
It's a call for public hearing, but, so this is just for prospective employees, it's not retroactive for employees?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Any other question? May I have a motion? Who else is this?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is the final review, taxi ordinance. This is assigned to law. I know Ms. Carrazzo and Mr. Porter have been working on this, so we can just do this after.
Yep, we had a meeting scheduled this morning, and we had 13 taxi representatives attend the meetings, very well attended. Their concerns varied, but the top concerns were the age of the cars. They really struggled with the 7 years. They said, the way the vehicles are purchased, they're purchased at auction, they're already older, but they may have, very little mileage on them. So they said their cars now average 7 to 10 years, some up to 12 years, and wanted to see if they met all visual inspection, why, they would have to turn their fleet over at 7 years. That was a great concern, a great concern. They were also concerned with medallions. They felt that companies within Schenectady should be able to expand first. Currently, the legislation doesn't require the number of open medallions any municipality can have. The municipality can set that. And also currently in the legislation, there's no means for, there's nothing in place right now for the universal medallion, which universal medallion would let cars travel back and forth. Schenectady cab companies can pick up in Albany, Albany cab companies can pick up in Troy, that kind of thing. But that part of it is not in place yet. I did specifically ask whether they would be coming back to municipalities when that part of the legislation comes into play. I didn't really get a clear answer. I'd kind of like a clearer answer on that specifically. Other than that, the other concern was the logistics of how we roll this out. It's one cab company who has multiple businesses across the capital region. Got a letter from Saratoga saying, this is what we're doing. We agreed to this. You have 90 days to come into compliance, figure it out. And he called and said, well, but wait, where do I go to get the meter and weights and measures? And they're like, we don't know. So he felt like 90 days was a little, it was concerning because there wasn't even a situation in place for him to go get the meter, get it measured and, sealed and all of that. So he was asking that the time frame be a fair time frame of implementation. In addition to that, there was, of course, great concern with other cab companies coming into Schenectady for events to service the casino, and basically just, obviously Uber and Lyft have had a tremendous impact on our taxi industry, and so the concern is that this just further exacerbates that issue and the amount of business they get. And then the only other thing in addition to that was the rate structure. they felt like a lot of the surcharges that are included in the city, like extra stops or having to load groceries or things of that nature, didn't exist in the CTA rate structure. So that was of some concern also. So I bring that to the council for discussion.
Mr. Palfio, you have anything?
Nothing to add at this point. I didn't see this on my agenda under the law department, so I didn't prepare anything in particular.
That's the reason why I asked the question, because it's assigned to you. Any other question? Ms. Porterfield?
Yes, so there isn't anything to compare it to. So do we have something that compares with what the city has currently charged? The point you brought up about the groceries, et cetera, it is not in here. So, yeah, so does it currently charge for 30 cents per minute to sit in traffic as well? So I think if that's not in the code before, because I thought that was an interesting charge. You have no choice when traffic slows down. You're not the driver, and even if you were the driver, traffic slows. So I just would like to have compared what this rate is versus what they currently charge.
It's in our city code.
Yeah.
City code.
So.
I know the first half mile is now $3.50 with us, and then each additional mile, we do it by the 1/8 of a mile, not the 1/10 of a mile, and I believe it's a quarter, not 20 cents. But they were specifically talking about weekend surcharges, also extra stops, and handling packages and groceries. Those were some of the specific charges that, they mentioned. So personally, I would like to have more discussion before we move forward on this. More discussion with Lauren specifically. She was out of town. She sent her colleague John, who was very knowledgeable. But I would just like to know if we can address some of these concerns in, a separate legislation that is an addendum to the legislation put in place by CDTA, or whether it's absolutely to be this exact way, and how malleable this legislation is at this point, because other municipalities have passed it. And I was very straightforward with the cab companies too. There's many things. I mean, I read through this a million times. There's many things that I absolutely 100% support, and that is, the oversight by CDTA on the cleanliness, the regional approach on the fares, the customer service training, because they are the first face that people see, and the having to ask permission to pick up a second person. I know that's personally been a not the best circumstance for me when I've had to take a cab, because they make a second stop, you sit there for 10 minutes while the guy's beeping the horn, and I got to get to work, and whatever. So there's much that I support in here, but I also believe that they've brought to the table some really valid things that we need to hash out and see how much flexibility we have before changing over.
Go ahead, Liz.
Clarification, they take and purchase vehicles at auction, and some of the vehicles they're taking parts and pieces from other cars to make one car that they can use. So are they using the VIN number as the year? Or are they using the body type?
Can I answer for you?
Then, is it the VIN number?
The VIN number. So
Well, the VIN number is what you're
that's
supposed
not
to
gonna change.
It's
They're
not
gonna
gonna
say they're taking parts
Or
off
they,
other
like
cars. They're taking the fender off.
they may take, a transmission out of one car and put it on another, and they may take doors off of one car and put it on, and they put them all
The
together.
VIN though is the one that has.
That's the year they go by.
Yeah.
They're not going by the body
Right,
type.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because sometimes, like a transmission that can fit like 10,
Anything,
15
yeah,
years,
right.
15 years.
Yeah, so despite changing the parts, it doesn't affect the people age.
Okay.
Any other? Go ahead,
Well, I
Mr.
think that
Reagan.
one concern that they have about the, defining only to use certain years and not having them too old, that's a good point, because, I have cars, my wife's car's 14, 15 years old. It's like brand new. And I know people that beat a car to the ground within 2 years, so it is a point, and it's a good, if it passes safety inspection, and then our police department does look at it for rust issues, it's part of the safety part. So if it's clean and serviceable, it gets you from point A to point B, I don't know why that should be a real issue as far as them being to operate that particular vehicle. So that's, I think, a real valid point. If the car is usable and it passes safety inspection, New York State inspection, I think that should be all that's necessary.
Yeah, and to continue the point, they said that often they'll buy an older car, the cars only last about 2 years tops, and we demand they have their own individual color, so if there's any issue after they purchase, they're repairing body because they're repairing it for paint anyway. So, I think meeting the criteria is super, super important, but I would like to see if we can extend the age of the taxis. I mean, again, one of my counterpoints were, one of the major points was, well, when we have like New Year's Eve at the casino, all the cabs can come in from other municipalities and line up at the casino. And I said, but then on the opposite side of things, you can go to First Night in Saratoga, or you can go to the convention center when, there's 1,500 people there, or, so I get that, but that's kind of a give and take, right? I mean, that part of it, I was like, no, I understand, but, you have the same opportunities to go outside of your, but again, that universal medallion right now is not in existence. So I would like a little more information from CDTA on that, on when they plan on implementing that part, and whether the municipalities will be contacted for, acceptance of that part of it. So for me, there's still some questions.
So are you going to reach out to CDTA for those answer to your questions, the universal medallion?
Yeah.
And just a question, when you met with them this morning, did they suggest any year, like 10 years, 15 years? Or
Well, the average of their vehicles is 10 to 12 years. Because I asked, what is everybody's, what are the ages of everybody's vehicles? So they said mostly 10, up to 10, but some had some 12-year-old vehicles.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
I just want to say, I think I'm comfortable with waiting and getting more information, so when we do it, it's done, and we don't have to continue to revisit it. And to answer the questions, because not only the points that were brought up at the meeting, I thought there were some valid points brought up during the public hearing as well.
I don't have a problem holding it for 2 weeks, but when you receive those information, can you share it to us so that we can move it along?
Yep. I know Lauren's out of town for another week, so it'll be just a little while before she's able to get back to me. But
Perfect. All right, thank you. So we'll hold this for 2 more weeks. May I have a motion to close?
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Okay, I want to open city planning and development and Sunseeker.
So the Community Builders has completed several housing redevelopment projects throughout the country, as you probably know. And they are recently proposing a phase 2 proposal. You're probably familiar with the Hillside View redevelopment project on Craig Street. So the phase 2 is to redevelop 40 properties and provide 92 new housing units in the Hamilton Home neighborhood, which includes a 62-unit mid-rise residential building, 20-unit low-rise mixed-use building, and 10 units that are on scattered sites in the neighborhood. So we are asking the City Council to act as lead agency for the secret review, and also to call.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Porterfield?
So there's also some rezoning that has to happen here. I see
That's
that in the
right.
package.
Yep. So the
So that's kind of what I want to know, because it's definitely residential where it's situated. So I'm not really clear why to move to commercial.
I think to,
And I know that's not what we're moving to, lean on the seeker. But then there's one other point that I wanted to bring up, and I mentioned this to the council before, that on the mid-rise, there's a concern from a resident that that this particular property, this particular one, is going to be built like 4 feet from their existing property. And they, really want to be able to have a conversation about, can we lengthen that? 4 feet is just very close.
and there's no setbacks
Right.
required there, so it's,
That's actually, as I understand it, that's supposed to be the surface parking that's going to be that close. Okay. I actually came to the planning council before to discuss it, and I'll come again, but I just wanted to make, I mentioned to the council as well, that is a concern. We certainly welcome the development, but it's really, really encroaching really closely, even though zoning allows it. Let me just be clear about that to the person's property.
and that's,
Going to be on the corner of Page and Albany.
okay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Given this is a fairly significant development project, and it's going to impact a number of neighbors, so it might be, it's not directly in this council moved ahead with the seeker designation and moving the planning, or moving the zoning change to the planning commission. Then we sit down with them and look at those specific instances where they want to be good neighbors, and how do we mitigate any of those potential areas of conflict.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have any other questions?
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, so that's the seeker, and then the zoning. Oh. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I was going to do it together, but that's okay. And then the zoning amendment for the proposal to the planning.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, cool. Move forward. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Perazzo, a ceremony reservation. We just moved those two.
Item 3.
She didn't have the updated.
Ms. Porterfield.
Yes.
Ceremony resolution for
So
Black History.
February is Black History Month, and to present a ceremonial resolution as we do every year.
Okay,
I'll move it.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty, and then Ms. Perazzo also has a ceremonial resolution.
Yep, Gert Purcell turned 95 last Sunday, and certainly in recognition of her 95th birthday, but also all that she's done for the community. I mean, she's really kind of a walking piece of Schenectady history, and it was wonderful to celebrate with her, but I think, it'd be nice to celebrate publicly too. So just wanted to bring her and some of her family members in to mark all the accomplishments of her life.
Nice.
I'll move it.
Second?
Second, yeah.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. I believe the rest needs to be an executive session, so,
Second.
ready, and we will go into executive session.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna leave.
Sorry, why are you guys?
For property sales.
But